Okay, my friends, just to make sure that we give our distinguished speaker as much time as we can, I'd like to just begin with a few words, just introducing this whole thing. Welcome to St. John's and to this Vision Education series. I can't express enough how important it is that you're here today, every single one of you. This forum and those that we're having every Sunday this fall are not just engaging and stimulating presentations. They are, but they are so much more than that. They're a part of a very exciting movement at St. John's. St. John's as a church is asking the question, how can we, over the next 20 years, make a positive impact in Bethesda, Chevy Chase, the community which we're blessed to serve? And why are we asking this question right now? The reason is because we believe that now is the only time we've been given to make a difference. This is our time. And as we're going to learn this fall, there's a whole community out there that is in need of a church that cares. And so in front of you, in your hand today, you have a sheet of paper. It's on a clipboard. I'll come back to the second part of it in a second. The first part, you'll see there's the vision statement. This is our recently adopted vision statement, and it identifies 3 areas of need in Bethesda, Chevy Chase that we hope as a church to address. And those 3 areas are equipping individuals for healthier and more holistic relationships, strengthening intergenerational connections, and facilitating more meaningful interactions across the socioeconomic spectrum. And the point of this fall series is so that we can learn and study together what are the issues related to each of these 3 areas of need, so that, and this is the ultimate goal, we can identify creative ideas and ways that St. John's can engage in a unique and creative way, engage those needs in the community. So plug in, enjoy the forums, but please do even more than that. Be an active participant. What that means is listen to the discussions and ask yourself this question, and start today. What's missing? Here's the need. Here's what's currently being done about it. What else can be done that could make this community even healthier and more whole? So the response form in your hand is to solicit your creative ideas. And we're asking you to think big. Over the next 10 to 20 years, what activity can St. John's do in the community? Maybe start a mission-driven coffee house in downtown Bethesda. These are just some ideas. Maybe it's start a wellness center somewhere. Or maybe it's start an irresistible after-school hangout spot for teens that engages their best selves and supports their well-being. So there are no wrong answers. No ideas are too big. This is our chance to dream. This is your chance to make a difference and for us to hear your voice. Your big idea might be the one that we've been waiting for. So enjoy the forum. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Ann Dursey to come up and introduce our distinguished speaker for today.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and thank you so much for coming to this inaugural session of our series on what we can do to make a difference in Bethesda, Chevy Chase. We're exceptionally privileged this morning to welcome as our first speaker to kick off this important series, the Chief of the Montgomery County Police Department, Thomas Manger. And Chief Manger comes to us today with an extraordinary wealth of experience and knowledge and recognition about effective community policing. He started his career in 1977 in Fairfax County, Virginia, and he's had 40 years of experience on the job, 20 of which were as chiefs of police, first in Fairfax County and then in Montgomery County. He's been recognized with a raft of local awards for effectiveness in community policing, but he's also got a national standing. He was one of 5 police officers who President Obama and Vice President Biden consulted after the killings in Dallas last summer. And he is also internationally recognized. He's the president of the Major Cities Chiefs Association, which is a group that brings together police chiefs from the largest urban areas in Canada, the UK, and the US. So it's a distinguished record of public service. But what impressed me the most about Chief Manger, when we spoke briefly before this presentation, was his strong personal commitment to community engagement in every way for effective policing. and being out, talking to people, talking to citizens, talking to groups, riding in police cars with his colleagues, and just keeping his ear totally to the ground and understanding developments in the community. This is exactly the local perspective that we're seeking in looking at how we can make a difference in our community. And I know we will learn a lot from Chief Manger. So enough from me. Let's turn to you. Please join us.
Thank you, Ann.
Goodbye.
Thank you all very much. I am truly honored to be the first in a series of speakers that at these forums. And I just, when I read about what the intention of these forums was, I was just so impressed with what this congregation is doing and what it intends to do. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you. I appreciate it. I am going to introduce Sergeant Tony Galladora is here, and he is a parishioner here. Many of you probably know Tony or have certainly seen him around. And as any friend and colleague would do, Tony leaned over to me just about 5 minutes ago to give me just a last bit of advice, and it was, don't mess this up. So Tony, I will do my best. Let me set the landscape for you. As Ann said, I've been a police officer for 40 years. And I can't express in words how much policing has changed in those 40 years in every way. And I could speak for hours, and I'm not going to, but I could speak for hours about how it's changed over that time. And the public's expectations of police has changed during that time as well. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about what we do and how we do it. But a piece of our mission is the law enforcement function. And that's not the only thing we do. In fact, that's oftentimes kind of a last resort. If we can, resolve a situation without enforcing the law, we like to do that. But the law enforcement component of our job has really changed and has really come under, I'll be kind and say, scrutiny in the last couple of years by elected officials, by the public, elected officials, and certainly the media. And that's changed things a great deal. Our mission in the police department is actually very clear to me, but if you ask the public, well, what do you think the police ought to be doing? How do you think the police ought to be doing their job? How do you think they should be providing service? It starts to get a lot more complicated. Clearly we are here to help people. If you ask any cop, why'd you take this job? They'll tell you it's because I wanted to help people. And you can help people in a number of ways depending on what their need is. We help people in crisis. We help crime victims. We help people that just find themselves in an emergency situation and they need assistance right now. I mean, that's what we do every day. But we also have to enforce the law, criminal law, traffic law, and of course we do it and we train, and our policy is, and we train our cops to do it fairly, to do it smartly, to do it without any bias of any kind, and most importantly, what we do has to be lawful. Every action we take needs to be lawful, and this is where I think we run into a lot of controversy where folks, say, well, the police officer did this and it was inappropriate, and oftentimes what it is it's in violation of law. When we arrest someone, when we take enforcement action, when we search someone, when we collect evidence, all those things are governed by the rule of law, and we have to abide by that. So I want to talk about crime for a minute. I give a presentation, it's a lovely presentation, a PowerPoint, and it takes about an hour and a half to do about crime in Montgomery County. And I show you where crime is occurring, I talk about what crime is occurring, I give statistics, and I talk about who is committing that crime. And so I'm going to touch on that a little bit, but I can't give you the entire presentation, so I'll just give you the Reader's Digest. The way we fight crime is we first look for where's it occurring. Then we look at the type of crime that we're trying to fight. You know, I mean, if we're, if we get a rash of car break-ins in a particular neighborhood, or we're getting, we got a serial rapist working in some community, clearly we target our efforts to address that specific crime. And then we target the folks who are committing the crime. And again, I can explain that a little bit more. But basically, it's places, behaviors, and people. I mean, that's where we target our crime-fighting efforts. So if you had seen my lovely crime presentation, here's what you'd come away with. That Montgomery County is a pretty safe place. Our crime rate is lower than probably 95% of jurisdictions that have a population of 1 million or more. And by the way, we're not in the middle of nowhere. Yes, we're not a city, but the fact is that we have very urban areas, and we're sitting in one right now. So the fact that we have as urban a county as we do, with the population we do, with all the issues that we have here, our crime rate is extraordinarily low. That's one of the takeaways you'd find. You'd also walk away going, gee whiz, where crime does occur in this county, and we do have serious crime in this county, it's concentrated in 5 different areas in this county. In fact, we've got, I think, 40-some patrol beats that make up this county. Probably 3/4 of our serious crime, our violent crime, 75% of our violent crime occurs in 5 out of those 40 patrol beats. 5. So where are they? Downtown Germantown, Montgomery Village, downtown Wheaton, the Route 29 corridor between White Oak and Briggs Cheney Road, and downtown Silver Spring. Those 5 areas account for easily 3/4 of our serious violent crime. So why do those 5 areas have so much crime and then other areas don't? Now, and I'll talk a little bit about Bethesda, and I think in our conversation later we'll talk more about this area. But why is it that those 5 areas have the majority of our crime? Well, one of the reasons is that's where people live. There's a very high concentration of population density. It explains why in Darnestown, where there's a home every quarter mile, that we don't have much crime out there. If you look at those areas, that's where unemployment rates are higher. That's where we have more homeless folks. That's where high school graduation rates are the lowest. That is where we have the most poverty in this county. And there are more families living in those 5 areas that the children, the young folks in those areas, too many of them have little to no healthy adult influence in their life. You have families that are either unable or unwilling to provide a healthy influence to their children. There's a man whose name is Rob Green, who's a very enlightened man. He is the director of corrections for Montgomery County. He runs our 2 jails. There's one on 7 Locks Road and the big jail up in Clarksburg. And if Rob were here, and by the way, think about Rob for a future meeting. He is just a tremendously brilliant man. But if Rob were here and you said, well, who's in your jail? Here's what he would tell you. Young people. That's who's in his jail, young people. In fact, now we don't have 15-year-olds in the jail. You got to be 18 to go to jail. But people between the ages of 15 and 30 are committing over 90% of our crime. So that's the first demographic you need to know. Between the ages of 15 and 30, that's who's committing our crime here. There's gang members. He's got a ton of gang members in his jail. And most of these young men are people who grow up with a lifestyle, with just an existence where crime and violence were acceptable choices. They were acceptable choices every day for these young gang members. In jail, you'll find people with mental health issues. 30% of the people that go to jail have significant mental health issues. There are people in jail who have significant drug and alcohol addiction issues. These are in fact, I think most of the people, it's over 50% of the people that when they are sentenced to jail, they go in, they have to get a blood test taken, a drug, and over 50% have illegal substances in their system when they get to jail. So we have lots of folks who committed crimes here in this county that are in jail, but the root of their problem was either mental illness, drug addiction, alcohol abuse, or just they didn't have a chance with the upbringing that they had. I mean, it started long before the kid would make his or her own choices. They were lost. Most of the folks in jail did not finish high school. The majority of the folks in our jails did not finish high school. Police chiefs from all over the nation are screaming for more mental health beds in their communities. They want drug courts. They want mental health courts. They want diversion programs, truancy prevention efforts, and any program that invests in at-risk kids. Now, I can tell you Montgomery County is doing pretty well. We are in desperate need for additional mental health beds in this county. They're always full. We always have problems where we've got an individual who's, yes, they're committing a crime, yes, they're involved in a situation where we can't just ignore them, that the police are called to deal with, and taking them to jail does no good. Incarceration is not doing that individual any good. We need to get them the right treatment, and we need those mental health beds. We're woefully lacking that in Montgomery County, as in just about every community in this country. We're doing well. We do have drug courts. We do have mental health courts. We are engaged in diversion programs to try and keep folks that have addiction issues and mental health issues. Again, incarceration is not the best thing for them. If we can get them treatment and get their lives back on track, that's a much better investment of our time and money. I met with the president, as Ann said, I met with the president right after the shootings in Dallas where those police officers were killed. And we talked frankly about the division in our communities. We talked about our division along racial lines, ethnic lines, religious lines, economic lines. And by the way, the biggest divide, in my opinion, the biggest divide in the Montgomery County is between the haves and the have-nots. We talked about the distrust of police in many communities. I'm talking here today, and my guess is if we took a survey that I'd get, not 100%, but certainly get a fair number of people in here who said, yes, we have trust and confidence in our police in Montgomery County. Tomorrow night, I'm going to a meeting at Piney Branch and Arliss Street. The topic of the meeting is the explosion that killed 7 people down in Silver Spring. The folks down there have some issues with how that was handled. They have issues with some of the actions that the police took during the incident and even after the incident. And I will tell you, if I took a survey of all the folks that show up at that meeting, I'm guessing my approval rating would not be quite as high. And but that's Montgomery County. I mean, when we can't talk about the community. My God, we are so many different segments of a community. And our community is divided along many different lines. And these are conversations that we have to acknowledge and we have to have. So I have 3 main responsibilities as a police chief. I've got to hire the right people. I've got to invest in their training throughout their careers. And I've got to hold every single member of my police department accountable to do the job the way it's supposed to be done. And that starts with me, by the way. Your police department should reflect the diversity of the community that it serves. When they had the shooting in Ferguson 2 years ago, one of the things they discovered was you had a community that was majority African American, and there were two African American police officers on the Ferguson Police Department. Clearly was not representative of the community it was serving. Now, for a community as diverse as Montgomery County, I can tell you we're always playing catch up. I have doubled the number of Hispanic officers in the time I've been chief. Our African American representation is pretty good. We have a higher, the national average for females in policing is between 11 and 12%. We're up around 18 to 20% female in Montgomery County. So we're doing well in terms of ethnic, racial. religious diversity. Our police department speaks the languages that are spoken in this county, and our police department looks like Montgomery County looks like. And that's a good thing, but that's a goal we have to continue to work toward. I also have learned over the years that one size does not fit all in terms of delivering police service. You know, the way we police Bethesda, we've got a bike team down here, the way we, the strategies we use down here in Bethesda are very different than what we're doing in Poolsville. I have foot beats in Silver Spring and Wheaton. There's no sense in me having a foot beat in Damascus. So, you know, the way we police has to be tailored to the community that we're serving. We need to train our cops to be able to de-escalate situations. You know, we get dispatched to a lot of very volatile situations. And, you know, what's the Hippocratic oath for physicians is first do no harm. And that's what I want my cops, you know, when you get there, don't make it worse. And so, you know, we give them a lot of training about, you know, on effective communication. By the way, the most important quality for a police officer to have, bar none, is effective communication skills. To be able to talk to that, you know, millionaire homeowner in Potomac whose garage was broken into, and to be able to talk to that homeless person on the sidewalk in Silver Spring, and to be able to effectively communicate in all situations with all kinds of folks. And that's, I mean, that I'll tell you, finding people that are able to do that. I can train people how to be a cop. I can't train them to have empathy, kindness, and a spirit for public service. That's who we look for to hire. I'll train them how to be a cop, but we need to find those folks that have those qualities. And it's sometimes a challenge because we recruit from the human race, and I've yet to find that perfect police officer, but we certainly have to strive to make sure we're hiring the right people. And we've got to hold ourselves accountable. You know, I'm wearing a body-worn camera. Tony's wearing a body-worn camera. I've got 900 patrol officers out here wearing body-worn cameras. And of course, the big cry after Ferguson was, you know, we got to put these cameras on police. We'll catch them doing those, you know, the terrible things that they do. And by the way, you know, over the last couple of years, you've got the social media and just the CNNs of the world who have convinced many folks in the American public, not everyone, but many folks, that there's an epidemic of police violence going on in this country and that police are out of control. Nothing could be further from the truth. I can tell you from 40 years ago to today, we are better trained. There's less use of force. But the fact is that the job that these cops got to do, occasionally there's going to be problems. And there's enough knuckleheaded cops that have made some awful engaged in criminal actions that have been caught by, you know, somebody's cell phone video, that it keeps the narrative going that, my God, police are out of control. It's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of 1% of cops that are involved in these kinds of cases. Yet the narrative is police are out of control. Let's put cameras on them. That way, we'll keep track of them then. Well, you know what these cameras have I've been wearing mine for over a year. You know, and Tony will attest to this. You know what these cameras are catching? Just how challenging this job is. Just how difficult situations cops got to go into every single day. And there's members of the public and the media, and I know we got you know, some members of the media here, but you know, there's this notion that, you know, if we train police well enough, every one of these situations will be resolved peacefully. Well, let me tell you a story, and then we're going to stop and have a conversation. Let me tell you a story. A few months ago, there was a man who shot and killed his wife in Prince George's County. It was over a custody dispute, and we think that he was intending to kill his stepdaughter as well. He left a note at his house saying that he was going to die suicide by cop. He killed her, left a note saying he was going to die in a shootout with police. He came over to Montgomery Mall the next day and tried to carjack a woman in the parking lot of Montgomery Mall. Two good Samaritans decided that they saw this struggle going on, this man tussling with this woman who was sitting in her car. And they went up to provide assistance. He turned and shot those men, killed one of them. He then drives 20 minutes up to Aspen Hill Shopping Center and tries to carjack another woman in the parking lot of the Giant Food up there. She resists. struggles with him. He shoots and kills her. Now, in that struggle, his glasses fell off. His glasses fell off and went into the car. And he didn't know that. All he knew is he lost his glasses somewhere. Now, he'd shot this woman and killed her. He's running now. And he runs to the other side of the shopping center where there is a coffee shop. And he goes into the coffee shop and sits there. Now, by this time, we've sort of connected the dots with the description. We had a description of his car, and we've connected the dots that this is related to the homicide in Prince George's County. And in fact, we pretty quickly figure out who it is we're looking for. And so as happens in any kind of homicide scene where you've got just what appears to be a random homicide, somebody getting shot in a car in a parking lot at the Giant Food, I've got plainclothes officers going around the area, seeing what they can see. And they notice the guy that we're looking for, because by this time we've put his picture out and everything else, sitting in the coffee shop there in the shopping center. Now, my guys are in plain clothes. They're watching him. And they know he wants to die in a shootout with police. He's sitting in a crowded coffee shop. He sits there about 20 minutes, gets up, walks over to the Michaels store, and starts walking through the aisles of the Michaels store. Now, my guys, mind you, are all about, I think they're all about 6'5", and you know, they're wearing the loose shirt because they got their gun underneath, and none of them look like someone who might be shopping at the Michaels. You know, but they're keeping an eye on him. He comes out of the Michaels, then goes into the Boston Market, sits down and orders lunch. Now, the Boston Market's crowded. It's lunchtime, it's crowded. And they wait for him. They wait for over an hour watching him. And he finally comes, and by the way, the reason he didn't just run, he couldn't see. So he finally gets out, he walks to his car. And there's video of this where my guys converge on him, get him in his car, grab him, take him into custody. No shots fired. Guy goes to jail. He's now awaiting trial for these murders. I got so many calls that day and for the next week saying, my gosh, your cops are so well trained. They took this guy into custody. They didn't fire a shot. This dangerous guy. He was, you know, all this. And I said, well, thank you. Yes, my cops are well trained and very disciplined, and I'm very appreciative that they used sound tactics, and no innocent person was hurt. We were able to take him into custody. But let me just finish that story. When my guys converged on him and got out, he was sitting in the driver's seat of his car with a gun in his hand. If he'd have pointed that gun at one of my cops, that would have ended very differently. Very differently. And what would the media have said then? What would the public response been then? It would have been different. Well, you know, cops getting a shootout, you know, could they have avoided all this? And, you know, that's fine. Those conversations are going to happen. Every time there's a use of force, and, you know, and we have those conversations in Montgomery County every day. But in the end, it was that man who controlled how that thing ended. So I just ask you to keep in mind that police, yes, well-trained, doing their job right, but in every interaction we have with the community does contribute to how that interaction ends. And I'll just finish with this. I just got a complaint from an individual who saw my cops talking to a Hispanic man in Silver Spring. They had him sitting on the curb and they were talking to him. And he decided he was going to go over and film the interaction. And let's say he wasn't filming it to protect the police. He's filming it hoping to get something that he could put on YouTube and say, oh my God, look at these police. So he goes over there and starts taunting the officers. What are you harassing this guy for? And he has no idea why we've got this guy stopped. What are you harassing him for? He starts shouting at the officers. And he's staying far enough away that they're, you know, but they're just certainly distracting them from dealing with this individual. And he's filming them, he's taunting them, and at one point, an officer comes over to him and says, you know what, the show's over, buddy. Why don't you just leave? And the man said, I felt intimidated. The officer was rude to me. I felt intimidated. And so, you know, I backed off. Okay, well, my cops are human. And, you know, and he got the response he wanted. He got something that he could complain about. So, you know, I talk to my cops over and over and over again about trying to make sure you diffuse these situations. Don't let people bait you, into doing something like that, because my cops are dealing with this every day. So we've got a tough job to do in a tough climate. We undergo a lot of scrutiny, and there's little tolerance for things not ending perfectly. And so I'm not up here to whine and complain. I understand our job is. Tony understands what our job is. But just understand that we're trying to deal with a lot of different issues: crime, mental illness, addiction, all these kinds of things in a very difficult climate. So whatever the congregation can do to help us, to help the community, to help alleviate these problems, God bless you. I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Please. Well, first of all, let me thank you so much for giving us such great context for a discussion about our community by laying out for us the core reasons that you've seen for problems in the higher crime jurisdictions, and that's the mental illness and addiction and substance abuse, and people just not having been given a chance because they were in an environment that permitted crime and violence and didn't provide education and family stability. I'm wondering, given that you also mentioned that bright dividing line between the haves and have-nots, how do those issues play out in our area, right around here in Bethesda, Chevy Chase? What are the impediments you see to healthy relationships in our community, given that backdrop? Well,
one of the things that the unique things about Bethesda, because Bethesda obviously a very urban jurisdiction, high density population, it has some of those elements. It just doesn't have the crime. Now I will, and as I go off on tangents, which I'm just reel me back in. Talk about pedestrian collisions. We have pedestrian collisions in three main places in the county: downtown Silver Spring, downtown Bethesda, downtown Wheaton. And why? Because we have a lot of people and a lot of cars. So there are things that do impact Bethesda. But the economic divide of have and have-nots, the kids growing up without healthy influence in their lives, just less of that here. So when we do have when we do have that homeless person in Bethesda, when we do have that gang graffiti or something like that, because we don't typically, we don't have gangs in Bethesda for the most. Now you've got people that you got 2, 3 or 4 16-year-olds who get together and say, yeah, we're the Rugby Avenue crew or something, but we don't typically have gangs activity in Bethesda. So when we do have that, and it does happen occasionally, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal, and we don't want to overreact, and we don't want the public to think, well, we're not giving it the attention that we should give it. But my gang unit is not going to spend a lot of time in Bethesda, and so people say, well, why don't we get this? Why don't we get that? Because I got bigger problems other places. So, the biggest, I think, the unique thing about Bethesda is when we do have problems here, it's like it's a bigger deal, and because people notice it, and it doesn't happen very often. You get desensitized to it in some of these other places.
So, thank you. What do you think might be some of the problems that are particular to a relatively homogeneous, affluent area like Bethesda? And I want to acknowledge also Tony Galladora, who is a parishioner of St. John's, 5 years, but has moved to Damascus, so we don't see him and his wife Heather and the 3 babies that were baptized here that often. But he is here every day working. He's the head of the bike team, the Bethesda bike team, which patrols the central business district. So you may have some things to add to this conversation too, and we hope you will. But what would you say are problems that maybe are more typical to the kind of environment we have here?
Some of the...
or that we might not see.
Right.
Things we might not see, but that you see.
We do have addiction issues in everywhere in the county, and it doesn't discriminate against the haves and the have-nots. So certainly making sure that we have the resources to deal with those addiction issues, the education piece of it. I could go into stories about we have opioid addiction issues in this county. I mean, you look at the number of heroin overdoses, heroin deaths, opioid addiction issues, and it starts. You can almost map out how it starts, and so I think education, talking about those issues, which again in a place like Bethesda, it's not because we're not faced with it every day, and that some people ignore it, some people are unaware of it, and certainly some people are like, well, that's not our problem. Well, it is our problem.
It is our problem.
And so mental health issues don't discriminate against a person's economic class, and to have and see here, if someone has a child who's struggling with mental health issues, we have the resources to get them the help they need, but there's a lot of folks that just don't, and so making sure that we have those mental health resources available to everyone, whether they've got money or not, is something. And that, again, while many folks in Bethesda don't have that issue, part of the 2nd District, and you all are part of the 2nd District we have 6 police districts. We do have areas, if you get along East-West Highway further towards Silver Spring, which is part of the 2nd District here. You've got so we are dealing with some of those addiction and mental health issues, and if somebody sees a homeless person laying on a sidewalk in Silver Spring, we don't get a call about that. If somebody saw it here, we get calls all day about it.
Right.
And again, I mean, taking that individual to jail is not what we do, not what we want to do. And
so you have partners that you work with, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely, and again, Bethesda's partner rich. I mean, part of community policing is developing partnerships with other agencies. I talk about the law enforcement component of our job. We spend more time trying to create solutions to issues that end up being 911 calls, or end up being stuff that the police go to because we're the only 24/7 government organization that you can call and get us there. So and it might not be a police issue, but who else are you going to call?
Right.
So we partner with a lot of other social service agencies and other non-government organizations.
Do you see any gaps?
Oh, there's plenty of gaps. I mean, but the main ones are the ones I've mentioned about mental health resources and but also working with public schools, truancy programs. You can predict when these kids are 9 or 10 years old and see some of the issues they start dealing with in school, that 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, that person's going to be in our jail.
And that's
you can almost predict
irrespective of affluence or lack of affluence in their lives.
So yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask you one last question, then turn to the participants here to ask questions, and that is, do you see any particular issues in Bethesda Chevy Chase that we might not see in age demographics? Are there particular things with kids? Are there particular things with youth and teenagers or families or seniors that you would point to as an area of concern?
There's, as we age, elder abuse issues are a growing problem for us.
Really?
And again, it's everywhere. And
Wow.
So being aware of those issues and making sure that our older folks have a voice, and understand that if they need help, there are places they can go to get the help they need. And so many of them are either embarrassed or just think, what can I do?
That's definitely one of those hidden problems that we should look at. Yeah.
I don't know, Tony.
Do you want to add anything before we go to questions?
I mean, what do you deal with here in Bethesda that folks aren't aware of?
Yeah,
Fortunately, we are very lucky to work with a lot of partners, especially with the homeless, like Bethesda Cares.
Maybe you can hold it.
Sorry.
Stand up, please, Tony, and turn around so everyone can see you.
Sorry, good morning. Yeah, fortunately, we're very lucky. We do have a lot of partners here. We work with Bethesda Cares, which deals with the homeless population. We're there. I'm stopping at least once a week. And they're great. Our communication is open. They call me. I'll go to them. We work together hand in hand. Probably our biggest crimes or things that we deal with and we talk about every week are theft from autos and cars that are stolen. And basically those, I could tell you, probably in the high 90% of them, they're people with the cars are unlocked and the keys are in the car. And I know it sounds funny, but nobody has keys anymore. Everybody has remote start cars, and they leave one in their car. Right. So these people find an unlocked door, they push the start button, and when the car starts, they're off with it. And it happens a lot more than you think, but we also target these people very heavily, and we're very successful in catching them, but every time we catch a group, there's another group that comes behind before too long. And we think the reason they come back here is because they know that people's cars are unlocked and they can be successful. So that's the biggest thing for us, is just getting the word out to please lock your doors. And also, when you see something, please call the police. As many times, I'm sure the chief gets emails where they go, I saw something suspicious, or my boss over here, Captain Fasinelli, he'll get an email, I saw something real suspicious, I think this guy was breaking into cars, it happened on Tuesday last week, and by that time, that information's not very helpful. So if you see something, call us right away and make sure we can come out. And a lot of the times it's maybe a misunderstanding, or they're not doing anything wrong. We can go talk to people and say, hey, sorry to bother you. Somebody called, was concerned. And, if it turns out everything's okay, then we'll shake their hand and be on our way. But it's better for us to just go talk and check it out, make you feel better, and say we did our job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Maybe questions? Please. Yeah. Here's a mic in the middle. Maya, if you'd like to. Oh, there. Yeah.
There's a lot of development currently and planned for the future in our community. And Bethesda Chevy Chase High School is overcrowded. And I'm wondering what the police department has an approach to it, or has plans to help the children in the high school. There's drugs in there, and the teachers and the staff work so hard, but it's just over capacity. So I'd be interested in just hearing the police department's approach.
Yeah, we're very, we have a very strong school resource officer program where we assign a police officer to every high school. And they're not there to make arrests. In fact, they make very few arrests. We get some SROs that will go the whole school year, maybe make 1 or 2 arrests during the whole school year. So what we need to do is, and what we do in fact do, is keep track of that development. And you're going to build 3 residential high-rises. Well, that's going to add tens of thousands of people to the area. Well, that's going to be more traffic, more density, more people, more crime, more issues. So we have to make sure we have adequate staffing to deal with that. When you have, when you know a demographic, you're going to, let's say they built another high school, somewhere. We've got high schools come with a workload for police. I mean, they're between traffic and, like I said, it's young people that are doing knuckleheaded things, and we're going to have to deal with that as well. So we got to address that through staffing and where we deploy. I told you my cops call it the 5-circle map. I show you a map of violent crime in the county. Boy, here's 5 clusters of where crime is occurring. If you look where I deploy my police, that's where most of my police are. So, which is pretty common sense. So, yeah, we do need to keep track of those things. That's why we stay in touch with other government agencies that have that advanced information, so that we have adequate staffing to deal with those issues.
So it sounds to me like generally, as Bethesda develops, and it's developing at a rapid clip, it's going to pose new problems and new questions for the police, and it's something we should be looking at.
Absolutely.
As a church that's looking to the future.
Absolutely.
And issues we can work on.
Right, and look at, if is that going to increase those root causes of crime?
Right.
The high school graduation rates, poverty, unemployment, homelessness, addiction.
Do you see any signs that that's happening yet with the development underway now?
You know what? The more people, the more issues.
The more issues, yeah. Another question? Yeah. Oh, excuse me, wait. Okay, please. Please.
No, go ahead.
John will help you. But.
One thing you mentioned was pedestrian accidents. The drivers can be very aggressive in downtown Bethesda, and especially on Arlington Road, on Bradley, Wisconsin, and East-West Highway. And I was wondering, is there anything we can do, like contact our county council or somehow help you? Because I know the cops can't be everywhere, but there have been times when there's just incredibly aggressive drivers behind me that it's really scary. And, when people are making turns in downtown Bethesda, I saw someone nearly hit once.
Yeah, we have about 400 pedestrian collisions in the county every year. Fortunately, most of them, person isn't seriously injured. But yes, but can I tell you something that when you have pedestrian collisions, people say, oh, it's the pedestrian's fault, oh, it's the driver's fault. It's about 50-50. And so there's equal problems on both sides. So we do pedestrian enforcement periodically throughout the year. And we do stings where we'll put somebody in plain clothes and have them just walk across the street, and so we'll get the driver that does that. We certainly, and we'll cite pedestrians. But can I tell you something? No good deed goes unpunished. Again, we need to do that because people need to obey the law. It's just common sense safety. But we get no love when we do those enforcements. None.
I can imagine.
Chief, thank you so much for coming. This has been so interesting. We're part of this vision process, and we're looking out for the next 15 or 20 years in this whole area. Where are there places that we can begin to actually anticipate? And what can we do to really fill a gap, to really, kind of anticipate where there are disconnects, where there are underserved communities, where there are needs? And with your experience in your 40 years, looking on your next 40 years, in this community, what should we be thinking about in terms of putting some of our effort into to really be active, proactive?
First and foremost, you got to focus on youth. It's just that's where we need to make our investment. And I think there's so much that can be prevented. It's tough to measure prevention, but I think focusing on our youth is tremendously important. And whether it's partnering with the schools, as volunteers to work with at-risk kids, whether it's foster parent programs, anything that we can get some of these young people who are just in awful situations and try and straighten them out before they start down they're too far down the wrong path, is a good investment. And then while there may not be right in a stone's throw from here or from where perhaps many of you live, communities that are at risk or in need, look, the Scotland community off of Seven Locks Road, and you can start sort of pointing to different places and say, well, maybe we should adopt that community and talk to that community about what can we do as a congregation to help. And then the last piece I would say is education. I mean, whether it's mental illness or addiction, making sure that our community is educated about the issue. Stop this, take away the stigma like, oh my God, we got to keep this quiet, or let's ignore this, or certainly, not get involved. We all need to be involved because those are significant issues in every single community in our country.
Thank you so much. Tricia's been waiting here, John, if it's okay.
I personally think that beyond going to a whole large-scale program of some sort or another to help youth, to help people, one thing I do myself, although I am a have-not, is I try and help the homeless and other people I see on the street, and I try and guide them in the right direction. One issue I found is I have called the police on a number of occasions asking for advice or trying to get the right resource to help a homeless person out in the freezing winter. And it seems there's a communication issue or lack of information all around that there might be resources, but I can't find them as a local citizen. So I think one of the major issues is communication and getting those resources where they need to be. My car was broken into, it was locked, the key was not inside, and the police never came. And my car was running with someone who attempted to steal it, at the door open, and the police never came. Now, it might have not have been a high crime at that time, I don't know, but I live right across the street, and no one ever came. So, it's also, but I think communication, like they could have told me, the police could have said, look, we're not gonna send someone out, just write a report. But they didn't, so it was a communication issue. I called Find a Homeless Shelter. They didn't have the information. So how do I get the information as a resident to help those people in the community to find the homeless shelter, to find the drug addiction program, to find...
If the county executive were sitting here, he'd say, oh, go to our website, and all that information's on there. I can tell you that the 311 is a wonderful resource, and they handle they get all kinds of questions and can direct people in the right resources.
Does everybody know what 311 is, the number? But,
Yeah, and they've, right, and we've gotten a lot of feedback about the fact that you're not getting a live person when you call, and they are expanding the staff there to try and make it more, not a 24/7, but certainly more hours, more people to be able to provide that help. So often, you know, we've got resources here, but you know what your problem is, the challenge that we all face, it's getting to the right person that can tell you that information. So develop a relationship with Tony Galador, because I'm telling you, Tony deals with this stuff every day, and he will. I can guarantee you, he will return your call and he'll point you in the right direction because he works with this stuff every day.
thank you. Thank you, Trish.
Right.
Can we get one more question, please? Meredith?
There's a lot of talk, particularly around prom season, about underage drinking
Yes.
and unsupervised children. Do you have any take on that? What kind of problem
Yeah,
do you think it is?
and here's where I irritate a couple of people with this answer. You know, prom season and underage drinking. I will tell you that kids that drink too often get in crashes, get hurt, and killed. And there are too many parents, and especially in Bethesda, and some of the wealthier areas, where they say, you know what, kids are going to drink anyway, so I'm going to host a party, and I'll have them all throw the keys in the bowl there, and then I'll let them drink, and it'll be all be safe and good. It's wrong. It's illegal. It is. You can get in big trouble for doing it, and it doesn't work because the kid, they and these parents that think that this is a good idea or somehow that they can make it work, you know what? There's too many dead kids that have been buried who went to those safe parties. It just doesn't. So, yeah, we're aware of that, and I've got a whole squad of folks that do nothing but work full-time. And can I tell you something? They spend more time in the 2nd District than any other district.
Wow, okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for giving us such
Thank
a
you,
wonderful
Thank you.
overview. And let me just say that, Chief Manger, we're at the beginning of a process here, and this is a beginning, I hope, of a dialogue with you and all of your colleagues. Look at us as a resource, and we'll certainly want to continue to talk to you about ways we can make a difference in our community.